Picture us.
That is true. Oh, it's counting down.
Okay. All right.
Okay, here we
Start
go.
right at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, excellent. We are live. Look at that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So every so often, I'm going to go over here to the screen and tell our friends that we are live. We're going to be talking about some Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Have you guys heard of this movie?
No, never.
It's really good.
We don't ever just randomly sit around the dinner table and discuss it or anything, because that would be nerdy.
That would be. That would be nerdy. Very nerdy.
We don't have giant posters in our living room.
I know. I see you guys are like Marvel guys. So let me tell you about this little movie called Star Wars. Yeah. So Marisha, Andrew, how are you guys? So glad that you can be a part of tonight's broadcast.
Yeah,
absolutely. We're excited about it.
As they say in the television world, my name is Ro. I am from the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast. Alex has the night off. Marisha, back to you.
I'm Marisha from Coruscant Radio Underground, and this is my husband and the actual host, Andrew.
Yeah, we're Coruscant Radio Underground, and hey, we're almost to 500 followers. If if we need 4 people tonight to go give us a follow, we'll hit 500 finally.
Excellent.
Awesome.
That would be awesome.
Yes.
Road to 500. Road to 500. Yes. So remember way back when we did our very first mega crossover episode?
Yes.
That was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
It really was. It was great fun. We had a great time talking about Princess Leia.
Yes, Princess Leia. I tweeted that out a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was days. Recently, yes. Brad had that question for you about Slave Leia, and he was making a reference to what book was that in? Was it
Bloodline?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, guys, I see people are starting to make their way into the chat. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to talk about Star Wars novels. And they don't have to be canon. They could be legend. I've got a whole bunch here. Really excited to I had these right now I'm in my office. And I had these here. I was very excited because a lot of these are Han Solo centric. Yeah. And I think I'll ask you guys too, what was the first I guess novels that were not the Star Wars novels, back in the day? What was your first introduction to Star Wars novels that were not the movies? Do you guys remember?
I mean, I remember people talking about them when I was a kid. I was always very curious, but I never read them until I married the king of the nerds over here.
So my dad gave me his copy of each of the Heir to the Empire books as he finished them, the first Thrawn trilogy. So my introduction was pretty young with that first Thrawn book.
Yeah.
That's just what you did. Y'all, you should have, when we got married, the hundreds of Star Wars books. So many of them.
Were you guys registered at Star Wars Land, Bookland or something?
We didn't need to be. He already had them all.
Yeah. No, my dad had a rule in our house that I always had to have something that I was reading. And at night he would say, you can either go to bed or you can go read for an hour. And so we were always reading something. And he was always reading the Star Wars books. And so when he would read it, he'd finish it and he'd hand it down to me. And so I read a lot of Star Wars.
And our children are carrying on that tradition.
That's great. Yeah. What are they reading?
Let's see. Iana, I think, is reading Legends of Luke Skywalker. I believe that she was interrupted in her pursuit of Star Wars books by the discovery of Harry Potter. But I think she's also read the Leia novel. So she's kind of been slow. She doesn't, she's still pretty little, so she doesn't read super fast, but she's kind of been trudging through some. And we've listened to some audiobooks. We listened to part of the Padme book, I think. When we take long trips, sometimes we listen to books like that. So that's always fun.
That's cool. I haven't read the Padme book, but so my first take into, like I was mentioning, it was the Han Solo trilogy.
Mhm.
Very fitting now that you have got the Make Solo 2 Happen T-shirt.
Yeah.
And I thought it was, I forgot what year those came out. They came out pretty early in the game. I remember, obviously, picking up the novelization of the movie, but for a while we didn't really have a lot of Star Wars material. So when they first came out, I know you're going to show it to me, right?
He's going to tell you what year it was published.
Yeah. So when there was a used bookstore right around the corner from my house, and I went in there, and I saw these. The cover. There was one cover where I think there was a crystal skull in the background, which I think is in Solo in
Yes.
Dryden's office.
Mhm.
So that's kind of cool. And there was one image that really intrigued me of the cover of one of the books. I think Chewbacca was in the background with the Falcon, and Han Solo was in the foreground, very, very cowboyish. So, it was one of those things that, I grabbed it right away, and because again, besides the movie, there was nothing that was really out. There was no other books, and I think those were the first kind of, books of stories other than the films that had come out. If I'm not mistaken, because I know early on there was the book that was supposed to be the sequel to Star Wars,
Right.
Splinter of the Mind's Eye, and I right now I'm blanking. I don't know which one came out first, but the Han Solo trilogy. When they were Andrew, you've got a one book volume of the trilogy.
No, this is the first book. Although remember there are actually 2 Han Solo books. Did you read the A.C. Crispin books or the other books?
I think even before the A.C. Crispin.
Yeah, you read the first trilogy, which is kind of hidden on the shelf. I think it's behind some other books over there, but it's over there. But those were earlier, and I can't remember what year those came out. But those were some of the first ones I read as well.
Yeah, I mean, talk about early. They were really early. Now
the earliest, that Splinter of the Mind's Eye was 1978. So it was far and away the first book.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are the books that I really got into, and I enjoyed them. What are you guys reading as far as modern novels? Going into some of the new Star Wars books that have come out.
Andrew's mostly read them in order as they've come out, and me, I've just sort of been like, I'm going to read this one now. So currently, I am a little more than halfway through Bloodlines.
Oh, Bloodlines are really good.
That I read. I just finished Lost Stars, and I've read several others. I've read Master and Apprentice and Dooku and the first Padme book and Legends of Luke. So I've read probably about half the books, the new canon books on our shelf.
I envy people that read books like Andrew. I know you read a lot. I'm a real slow reader. Like my mind, I'll read a page and I'll read it and and then all of a sudden my mind starts to go off somewhere. And by the time I get to the bottom, I'm like, wait a minute, what just happened? Because I'm thinking about like something else. And then I have to go back. I'm like, so I get really distracted with reading.
Yeah, that's actually why I can't do audiobooks.
Oh, that's interesting. And I'd rather do audiobooks because I pay more attention to that no matter what I'm doing. And I can see that, for, someone like some of the, like, I guess it's the opposite. You get distracted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
while I'm listening, I'll start doing other things.
Yeah.
And
I can see that. I do that when I listen to other podcasts. I'm like, I'll pop it in and I'll be driving and listening, and then all of a sudden I start thinking about other stuff, and I'm like, "Ah, I got to see what the guy said again.
I missed it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you guys that read a lot, I envy you because I really want to absorb a lot of the new Star Wars stories that are coming out, especially nowadays. You know, obviously all this stuff that's coming out, but you know, between the sequel trilogy, the whole series of Road to, you know, the Road to Force Awakens and all that stuff. So the first new novel that I really got into was Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Somebody posted earlier. We did get a lot of feedback from folks when I started to post that we were going to talk about novels. So, well, I'll kind of look at my phone and see who said what. But yeah, Lost Stars was a real great treat for me. And it's Claudia Gray, obviously now part of Project Luminous, and it's going to be exciting. What do you guys think of the new? What are some of the other stories that you guys got into? I started getting into the Aftermath trilogy, but I never finished it. I think it moved. I don't know if it moved slow. It was just kind of, I don't know.
The first one moved really slow for me.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed the second and third book.
For me, it was a little too herkily-jerkily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't. There were a lot of interludes in those books that I know some people liked them, but I didn't because they didn't go anywhere. They were all dead ends, and that just drove me nuts.
Yeah.
You like your stories to finish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, that was on the list, right? Yesterday.
Yep.
Actual
ending. Yeah.
You like actual endings.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I only read the first Aftermath book because it's the only one that my brother bought on Audible and I listened to, and I didn't want to spend $30 on the other two. So I only listened to the first one. I did enjoy it, but I didn't love it enough to go out and buy the other two because, I mean, I'm busy. I have little children, so I'm much more likely to listen to audiobooks than I am to actually sit down with a paper book. And I did read Lost Stars, but I didn't do school with my kids that day. So it's kind of a trade-off for me. If I'm going to listen, if I'm going to, sort of consume books, it's usually going to be in audiobook form. So I think Andrew was, he's like, it gets better. And I was like, yeah, but better enough for me to spend another 60 hours listening to the audiobook.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. 2Med2 talks about Dark Disciple. Is that the one with Quinlan Voss? I can't remember. Did you guys read that one?
I did not read that one. I thought that was the one about Ventress.
Yeah, that's the Ventress book.
So
it's on my shelf and I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
It's on my to-do list.
I can picture I thought Quinlan Voss and Ventress were on the cover.
Yeah, I can't remember who else is on the cover.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's a really good one. I've gotten a lot of feedback from other people, and Dark Disciple is on the top of everybody's list. So we've got one of our followers, the MRC Tech. He says he really loved Black Spire. Have you guys read the Black Spire book?
Black Spire.
Galaxy's Edge story?
I did not read the Galaxy's Edge story.
I haven't read those yet.
Yeah, I think those are some of the ones that came out later.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, I'm still catching up to the earlier ones.
Someone in the chat just said yes. We're all right.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Ventress.
Yeah. So, what about the Phasma book? Did you guys read the Phasma book?
I did. It was so weird.
Was it? I didn't catch that one. What was
you
weird about it?
Yes. But I don't know if I finished it.
You didn't finish it. So my sister's husband, really declares that he's not a nerd, but he is. And I think he described it as it felt kind of like Mad Max in space. And I think that it kind of had a lot of that vibe. It was just very the world was very, it was like a really primitive world that she lives on. And so most of it like didn't feel Star Wars at all. Like there were no ships, no nothing. It turns out that they had, that there had been technology there. It had just been lost. But the story was just very, it was really dark. Obviously Phasma's kind of a dark character. She's not a good guy, so you don't really expect her story to be cheery. But the story was really, really dark for Star Wars.
Oh, wow.
Just her kind of ruthless, single-minded pursuit of power and survival was kind of unsettling for me, honestly.
Wow.
What did you think?
I mean, that's, like I said, I don't think I finished
You
it.
didn't finish it. Yeah.
It came out at the same time as several other books, and I think I started it and then switched to one of the others. And I just don't remember much about it.
So when these books come out, and we've talked about this on the show, we talk about how the movies come out, and okay, that is what it is, and then they go back and write either a history or a little write up on a character that has been in the movies. And just recently, we did our podcast episode, Alex and I, on side characters and how.
Right.
We as fans, we really demand a little more information when it comes to these characters, because the galaxy is such a huge place. It's such a wonderful place to explore and get to know all these characters. What do you guys think about how the authors, as far as bringing stories to the characters that we see in the movies, what do you guys think about how they're doing it? Are they doing it, and does it change your perception of the character after you read the books? And obviously with Phasma, you're talking about how her, she's a very different character. I guess, and again, I didn't read it. Did it deal with the history of her and who she was and all that stuff?
It was basically the planet that she came from. And sort of their tribe that she kind of grew up with, and how a First Order ship basically crash lands on their planet, and their interaction with them. And she sort of meets these people and is like, okay, they're my ticket off of this desolate rock. And so she decides that that's how she's getting out. And so she basically ingratiates herself with the First Order, and that's her way off the planet. But also her determination that nobody in her new life knows where she came from. She doesn't want to be perceived as somebody from a backwater. She wants to be perceived as just a warrior, basically.
So how does that change your perception of her character? And I guess, other characters that you read about after the fact?
I mean, you understand her motivation, but she's definitely one of the more, and she's just evil. You understand why she is that way, because she grew up in such a harsh environment, but you definitely, I guess it just gives more kind of conviction to the fact that, like, yes, she is really is as bad as she comes off. Some of them it's like, oh, well, maybe they're a little bit sympathetic because they had such a rough childhood, and then there's her, and you're like, and we just don't like her. That's really kind of how I came off feeling, which generally isn't how you come off feeling about someone at the end of a book. But it's also not told from her perspective. It's basically someone recounting the information they've discovered about her.
Oh, okay.
So I guess that's kind of how they get around telling the story of a villain, and
Sure.
It's still kind of her still feeling villainous at the end.
Yeah. So do you guys have a favorite author of books? Anybody that comes to mind?
I mean, like in the new canon, I would say, even though I'm still a big fan of Timothy Zahn's work, I think what Claudia Gray is doing as far as telling stories centered in the universe we already know, she's just doing an excellent job.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see Timothy Zahn kind of moving away from the main story with these, particularly with these new books he's got coming out later this year.
Sure.
And where he can go tell stories that aren't restrained by the existing canon.
Yeah, we have a follower. Star Wars Galore says Claudia Gray is the greatest of all time. My favorite is Master and Apprentice. Loved seeing more into Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's relationship. Seeing them struggle to click was so interesting. Also really loved Rael and his story. He's flawed. He's a rough exterior, but he's a really good person. Did you guys read Master and Apprentice?
Yes, and I loved it. I think that may be my favorite Star Wars book to date, is Master and Apprentice. I mean, I always really liked Obi-Wan, but I felt like I wanted more Qui-Gon.
Sure.
After spoiler alert, he dies at the end of Phantom Menace. I always really felt like they had an interesting dynamic, and I always wanted to see more of them. And the book was so well done. And I think it also provides some interesting background, the Anakin makes cuts to Obi-Wan later, like how much he hates flying, and so you kind of get the backstory of like why he hates flying, what things happen, so some things like that. But yeah, such a good book. I think, have you read it?
No, we don't have it. You listen to the audio.
Oh, that's right. I listened to the audiobook.
I bought the book, and then I realized I can't read this. So then I bought the Audible, and it was great. I think the guy that narrates it does a couple of voices, but he's spot on with both Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon.
Absolutely.
He's really a great talent. And what was the other one that was? I don't think it was Lost Stars. Count Dooku book.
I think it was just called Dooku. I read it.
Lost. I think it was Dooku. Jedi Lost.
Jedi Lost. Yeah, I think that.
Yeah. Now that on Audible, if you haven't tried it, you guys should definitely check it out because it's a full cast audio presentation. Again, that's probably for me. It's the best way to absorb Star Wars books because again, it's rich in sound effects and music, and it's like a radio drama. And I love the old Star Wars radio dramas.
Yes,
they're the best thing out there as far as dramatization of Star Wars, besides the movie, obviously. But yeah, we have another follower. Padawan of Christ says easily Lost Stars. He was heavily invested in Thane and Sienna's relationship. The overall story was interesting, and I was hooked the entire time. And I'm really hoping we get a continuation of their story at some point. Lost Stars for me was like the first book I read during that whole, journey towards or road towards. And, they're classified as young adults, but they were really, really good. There's certain parts in the story where I can kind of picture John Williams' music as the action is going, and a really interesting take on the events of Star Wars, the events that we already know from a different perspective. Yes. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew read it when it first came out and has been talking it up ever since.
No, I mean, it was such a cool perspective to have this. We've told people on the Empire side, we've told people on the Rebellion side, but we had not had two people who were in a close relationship who ended up on opposite sides and told it from a dual perspective where both of them are seeing these things at the same time. And
I think that's an important perspective because that's how Civil Wars work.
Sure.
I mean, you don't just have the people that you hate over there, you have people that you love on both sides of a conflict like that.
Yeah, it's and again for a young adult novel, the concept of that story was very, very interesting. Just about perspective and point of view. It was really, Andrew, like you said, Claudia Gray really is doing some great stuff.
Yeah, she really is.
She reminds me the most of the writer, the way that writing was done for the expanded universe. Her writing reminds me more of those old books. You know, listen to Timothy Zahn or Michael Stackpole or these people talk about writing those books back in the day, and it was kind of the Wild West of Star Wars. I mean, they could write almost whatever they wanted, and even though she still got restraints, she seems to write around them better than a lot of the other writers.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Her writing doesn't feel like it's constrained by the constraints.
Right. And I know what you're talking about too. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And then you wonder too, like how much the company, you know, how much Lucasfilm, you know, lets them, you know, fly. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some constraints because they want to kind of keep stuff, you know, off limits because of whatever plans they have.
Well, we've seen,
if indeed they have plans.
right? Theoretically, they do, or you know, to stay out of the way of any potential future plans.
Yeah.
We've seen Timothy Zahn. He's usually at Dragon Con, which is one that where we usually go over Labor Day. And basically, he said he's not allowed to write any more Thrawn after Rebels in case Dave Filoni wants to do something with it.
Oh, okay. That's pretty exciting.
So, which is why I think he's gone back and done other things, you know, done stories that have been, you know, set before that. But it definitely, to hear him talk, he's like, yeah, back in the day, you know, like we could sort of like dream things up. And now it's like, okay, here's a list of things to have in your book. Have fun.
Yeah.
You know, like whenever he was writing the second book for the new Thrawn series, he was like, okay, we want that too. And, you know, they had things that they wanted specifically to tie in with the park, you know. So I think one of the things they're kind of using books for a lot is to try and tie in merchandising and things like that, you know, park and, you know, expanded stories on specific things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So we got Andrew. I know when we talked, when Brad and I talked to you a long time ago, were you a big reader of some of the older expanded universe stuff or the legend stuff?
Yes, I mean, I pretty much read everything I could get my hands on up until they got really into the Yuuzhan Vong War. And I kind of drifted away after that.
Yeah.
But it was, some of the stories started getting a little too silly for me at that point, and I kind of lost interest. But I mean, I read, you know, all the X-Wing Squadron books, iJedi, all the books with Jaina and Jacen Solo, Corran Horn. I mean,
All the Timothy Zahn books.
All the Timothy Zahn books.
And at least half of them are still on our shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I saw the picture that you posted.
Yes.
Very nice. I'm going to have to look through that little library there.
Yes.
But yeah, it's, you know, I see Bloodline. Bloodline was another really, really good one. And again, man, I think Claudia Gray really has a grasp of this galaxy. And obviously she's, you know, whether she understands the galaxy or not, she's a really good writer. She, you know, did Leia too, right?
Yes.
Yes. Leia is another book. I mean, what'd you guys think of both Bloodline and Leia? I think there's a lot, especially in Bloodline, there's a lot there when it comes to the relationship between Leia and Darth Vader. It was very surprising to see how the rest of the galaxy perceived Darth Vader, and when that, if anybody hasn't read it, I won't say it, but when the news hit and the secret was out, that like blew my mind. I didn't know what state the universe was in. I didn't know, you know, what people knew. What are some of the other surprises or some of the other elements that are thread through these books? And again, it's testament to her writing skills as well. But you know, you're always we think we know these characters, and then all of a sudden Claudia Gray comes out with this book, and it's, you know, something else comes out. Talk a little bit about the quality of especially Claudia Gray, but Talk a little bit about the quality of these stories.
I really appreciate the fact that they chose to have the same writer write Leia before the original trilogy and Leia after, because I think that sometimes it's a little jarring to see how different authors deal with characters. It's like, that's really not the vibe I got about that person from this previous book. So I think that the decision to write about her as an adolescent and as a middle-aged woman by the same person was a really good call, because, you can kind of see in Bloodline sort of the callbacks to the person that she was, talking about how she was, kind of bright-eyed and optimistic when she was young. And, because it like to have somebody who actually really has a good connection with not just the character from the movies. I think that's something maybe a little bit lacking in some of the new canon, is that kind of continuity where you feel like the authors or the writers really have a firm hold on everything that's been done with that character before.
Mm-hmm. Where you feel like when a different author picks that character up, like maybe they're writing a slightly different character.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think about that. I didn't realize, I guess subliminally I did, but that's a great point that you brought out, that she, Leia is written by Claudia Gray before all this stuff happens, when she's a young senator and she meets, she's friends with Holdo and all that stuff. And after the fact in Bloodline, you just blew my mind, Marisha.
That's what I'm here for.
But that's, that's a great point. And you're right. It's something that the new films kind of missed the boat on, as far as having a consistent vision. But that's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Great example. And I think, I hope, I've said this before, I hope Disney kind of sits back and looks at it and says, yeah, we probably need to have like one unified voice going forward in these films. And I think they're on the right track, especially now with Project Luminous and all the authors that are getting together to kind of, write these new stories. And again, I'm not a big reader. I do enjoy, if friends of mine make fun of me because when we used to go to Tower Records and pick up like new music, the way I judged it was by the cover. If I liked the cover of the CD, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll buy it. And that's similar to the books. If the covers, if I like the covers, I'll get them. But
done a great job with the cover. One thing you have to give all the books for the new canon is the covers have been top notch.
They have.
The illustrators and whoever's doing the, kind of putting together the look for the new canon books has done an excellent job.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had another, here we go. Hold on a second.
Why are we not seeing any of this?
Link Voxamillion says that his favorite is also his first expanded universe novel I got into when the sequels were first announced. Darth Plagueis. Such an interesting story, and made Sheev Palpatine his favorite Star Wars character. Too bad they wiped that from canon, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah. But I started reading that. I wonder, I don't remember finishing it, but the first couple of pages of that were pretty exciting and pretty. I think didn't they start at the end and then work their way back? I can't remember now, but
yeah,
first couple of pages were dynamic.
Yeah, no, that's a really great story, and they really need to find some way to start bringing some of that stuff. I mean, Plagueis, even though we never see him and we really only hear about him once, he's clearly a very important piece of the puzzle.
Oh yeah.
And now in canon, we don't know anything about him other than what we're told in the opera scene.
Yeah.
Right. Other than he has a tragic tale.
Right.
Yep.
That you would not hear from the Jedi.
Alex and I did our cold open. We were just kind of warming up, and we talked about that scene in the opera.
I like that scene in the opera. I don't think everybody likes it, but I do.
Oh my God, I love it.
Oh, that's
It's a great scene. It's a great setup, and obviously they they took that scene and kind of ran with it for Rise of Skywalker. But that's another story.
Yeah, I remember watching it as a teenager and being like, that is creepy.
Yeah.
Like just how that whole like I'm your friend and but like I'm going to destroy your life kind of vibe he's got going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kudos to Ian McDiarmid because I was mentioning to Alex on our last episode that I think he's obviously is a great writer, great actor, but the way he delivers his lines especially in that scene, chilling, absolutely chilling.
Yes, definitely.
So Andrew, since you read both incarnations of the Thrawn stories, the expanded universe old stuff and then some of the newer stuff, and I agree they should start bringing little by little. I know they brought Thrawn into Rebels, but can you tell me a little bit what were some of the major differences between the old Thrawn and the new Thrawn books?
All right, so the difference that stands out the most is the old Thrawn in the expanded universe. He is straight up a villain.
Yeah, he's a little scarier.
He's scary. He's intimidating. He's he's a real threat to the New Republic. And in this new Thrawn that we're seeing, which I do enjoy, is that we're seeing a character that, even though he's on the bad side, you can kind of root for him. There's this element to Thrawn that you like, and even though he's the bad guy, they haven't pitted him in the books so much against the rebels, but against dealing with other Imperial forces and dealing with outside threats. And so they've really made him a much more likable character.
Yeah, you kind of get more of the feeling in the new books that he's ruthless if he needs to be, but he's not ruthless just for its own sake.
Right. In the old books, he was just ruthless.
Yeah, because I was reading the Heir to the Empire, and at some point, one of his gunners like shoots at a rebel ship and misses, or something like that, and he like walks in and just like straight up tells Is Nogri to kill the guy, like right there on the bridge, and I was like, I was not expecting that because in the newer books he's a little more, he kind of looks after his people, a little more. He expects loyalty, but he also kind of doles it out, and where in the original books he just sort of expects loyalty.
Yeah. In the old books he's very much meant to be a replacement villain for Vader.
Yeah. Well, it seems like they gave him some an extra dimension in the newer books and the newer stories that I think is needed when you're creating a villain. They say a villain doesn't know he's a villain; he just thinks he's doing his everyday thing. But with Thrawn, he's a very, very interesting character because there is a duality with him. It's just he's not just I'm an evil dude. There's kind of a rhyme and reason, and I think those are the more interesting and dangerous villains,
right?
Because you have to be careful around those guys.
Right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but I think what Timothy Zahn really deserves so much credit for is when you go back to that original trilogy of books and you start to realize, this was the early 90s. And then you start to realize how much of his material was sourced for the rest of the expanded universe, for the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy.
Yeah. A lot of his concepts, they haven't used them exactly the same way, but there's sure enough a fleet hiding out somewhere in the outer regions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish they would pull the trigger already. I mean, I think it's too late now, but I wish they really, took a lot more from the Thrawn stories and brought them into the films, because I think it would have helped, pad a lot of the explanation as far as the fleet and all that stuff. But yeah, it's Thrawn is one of my favorites, villains. And when he popped up in Rebels, I was like, oh, they're going there. Let's see how this plays out. But yeah. So
And
do
he
you
was
guys?
great in Rebels. I really liked him.
Yeah. And again, to read something obviously is different, but then to see him interact with the characters that in Rebels was a real treat. Because like I said, there's and I don't know the name of the actor, the voice actor that plays him, but just his delivery, his deliberateness, the way that he's, the cunning strategist, the way they laid him out, know your enemy, and he just got all in your face and in your business to kind of try to figure out how to beat you. And again, like I said, those are the dangerous kinds.
Yes.
Well, he's Thrawn as such an amalgamation of Erwin Rommel, Robert E. Lee, Sun Tzu, some of these great tacticians throughout history. And I mean, that's the source material that Zahn went to when he created that character, with all these great military tacticians.
That's cool.
Some of whom were not good people, but who were still, compelling leaders, clearly, demanded.
Yeah, definitely. So we have another follower, JB the Cape, Sabra Kadabra, but I'm going to say Sabra Kadabra. No, I don't know why. So I'm assuming Sabra is female. Either Thrawn or Lost Stars tore through both of those books really quick. Lost Stars could be a movie or an animated film. I really dug that story. I agree. Like I said, I could. There was one scene, I think, in the when Sienna or one of the characters went back to try and I think she went back to her home planet. And it's weird because they had this little love scene together somewhere in the mountains, and then they rode some speeder bikes down the mountainside, and I can kind of hear the music. I can definitely see that as like a little animated film or a movie per se. Really good stuff. Yeah,
really well thought out. It's all very, all the pieces fit together so well, and it's such a great story, which is remarkable considering it's this, the background is a story we know.
Yeah, that's what really drew me in, because every so often you would stumble upon a scene where it's like, you see the Death Star or whatever, and throughout history you see the battle at Hoth. There was a scene there. So yeah, it's very well done. What do you guys think? So we were talking a little bit about this during one of the live streams that Charlie Skywalker was having. We were talking about Darth Vader. So Darth Vader right now is enjoying kind of some news stories. I think there's a new comic book out. Even after the Charles Soule story where he builds his castle on Mustafar, so now it's kind of progressing. We started talking a little bit about how personally I feel like there's a line when it comes to characters like Darth Vader. Sometimes too much isn't that great. Because I think with Darth Vader, for me, he's one of my favorite characters. I think he's at the top. And when you start filling in the blanks and replacing what you have in your head, sometimes it's not as good. And then you start to see flaws in the characters based on new information. And in your head, he's all, he's perfect. He's Darth Vader. He is who he is. What do you guys feel about too much information when it comes to novels? Is there a line that you guys feel like you don't want to cross?
Yeah, I feel like Thrawn Alliances really told me a little bit more about what Darth Vader was thinking than I really wanted to know. In general, I like new information, but I think some characters are more compelling when they're more mysterious.
Right.
I think once you kind of start to break that that mystery, it's not all of them, but I think Darth Vader was a little less impressive maybe after kind of the whole being in his head thing in the second Throne book. But that's not usually how I feel. Usually I'm all about whatever additional information I can get on anybody.
Yeah. No, I agree with that to an extent. I mean, that the second Throne book was definitely my least favorite of the two. And I understand what Timothy Zahn was doing because when he writes Thrawn, most of what we see of Thrawn is in his head.
Right.
And he was comparing that to the way Vader approaches things to the way Thrawn approaches things. But yeah, I don't think we necessarily got anything beneficial out of it.
Yeah.
But you go back to old books. I mean, there's even an old book. I wish I could remember which one of the expanded universe books this is in, where, you know, we kind of get in Vader's head for a minute when he's in his meditation chamber,
Mm-hmm.
where when he's in that meditation chamber, he can actually force heal. He can actually partially begin to heal himself. But as soon as he comes out of the chamber and that meditation is broken, he deteriorates again almost immediately.
That's crazy.
That might explain, you know, a lot of people were having issues with the robustness of Vader in Rogue One in that hallway scene towards the end, where he's just like kicking butt and he's doing all this stuff. And then, you know, just, you know, I guess a few hours later when he meets Obi-Wan, he's like, so it's like, you know, obviously in the real world, we know why, but in universe, I guess people were trying to explain that, you know, because of his condition, the reason that he needs to go back to the meditation or back to chamber that we saw him come out of in Rogue One is that he needs to kind of recharge or rejuvenate every so often because, you know, of you know what he has been through. I guess I can accept that.
Being burned up in a volcano will do that to a person.
Exactly. So what do you guys think of Project Luminous? Are you guys excited for August to come, or?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm particularly excited for that Claudia Gray novel and for Charles Soule's book. Yeah. I've actually never read a novel written by Charles Soule, so I'm curious about it. I know he's written a couple, but you know, when they had Cavan Scott and Charles Soule on the list, I just assumed Cavan Scott was writing the novel and Charles Soule was writing the comic, and they flipped it around on me.
They subverted your expectations.
But that stuff all looks interesting. I think what I'm most excited about that, because my biggest complaint with the new novels so far, particularly with this last round, these books leading up to The Rise of Skywalker.
Journey to the Rise
of Skywalker book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those stories, especially, and I understand they were trying to hit a moving target because that movie was being changed constantly. And I suspect that story changed a little bit after they were done with their books, and they only knew so much about what was going to happen anyway. But particularly that Resistance Reborn, which was supposed to be our big tie-in novel.
Oh yeah, I heard you talking about it in one of your podcasts. Like it went nowhere.
I mean, it tells a story that I enjoyed. Okay, I didn't like the way she handled certain characters. I didn't like the way she handled Rey. I didn't really like the way she handled Leia. But the other story, you know, we brought in Wedge and his wife and, you know, Nora Wexley, and we brought Snap Wexley back in from the Aftermath books. And we got to go on a pretty cool little adventure with them. But then you get to the movie and it's like it never happened. And that kind of, because, you know, Wedge isn't there when we start. And these other characters that we rounded up along the way to bring back to fight, you know, for this last big fight, they're not there. And I really, and it may be that some of that stuff just got cut out of the movie because they were trying to keep it close to 2.5 hours. And so that I feel like is the big problem with the way when you ask somebody to write a book, but then you put all these constraints on them that they, you can't do this with this character and this with this character.
And you can't we're not telling you where the story's going.
Right. You can't talk about these things because it'll mess up where we're going with the character, but they're not telling you where they're going with the character. And so that's what I'm most excited for Project Luminous, because they talked about recreating the spirit of the early expanded universe. And you can't do that when you're writing in an area where you're constrained. That was the beauty of the original expanded universe, was they took this space where there was nothing and created all these new wonderful stories. And I think that's what they have the opportunity to do with Project Luminous.
They've certainly got people on board for it.
Yeah, it does seem like they're taking their time and planning this out a little bit more. And obviously now that they don't have any films, as far as we know, they can really. I almost have a feeling like they're setting this up for, if this works out well, then they're going to go into movies within this era.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no plans for any movies or TV shows.
Well, I think right now, they're focused. I still think we're getting something set prior to this in the Old Republic era. And I still think we might get something that occurs, either some more standalones with existing characters in the saga, or possibly another solo movie, or anything else in that realm. So this, for now, is this spot for artists and writers to create unhindered by film. Because like we talked about with Zahn, his character wound up in Rebels, but now he can't do anything with that character post the end of Rebels because Dave Filoni might want to do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why he's going back and writing prequels to the Throne books now.
Yeah.
So I do like this going to a new place that's just unencumbered by everything else in writing new stories.
No rules.
Yeah, it's definitely advantageous to not have those constraints, especially in a universe where everything kind of has to tie together, and when it doesn't, we can tell.
People noticed. They thought we would, but we did.
Mm-hmm. Can't fool us. But yeah, so I'm excited for new Star Wars stories to start to to unveil itself. It's what was I going to say? The idea of getting more stories. I think these characters are done. Honestly, if especially, I know a lot of people are really hoping to see Ben and Rey again, because you didn't see Ben's Force ghost and he's still alive. I'm sorry, but yeah, I just
about that.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think Rey buried those lightsabers, and I think Disney buried the franchise, and it's done. Bye bye. See you later. Sayonara. But I'm really looking forward to some new characters and new stories. For some reason, I was not as excited to see a lot of the stuff that was coming out when they did the announcement for Project Luminous. Although the artwork, it's not like the best. It's not like the best, but it does harken back to a lot of the early expanded universe, the Old Republic, and a lot of stuff from that era. And I love concept art. The stuff that came out for the Rise of Skywalker, based on the Colin Trevorrow, however you say it, his version of the Rise of Skywalker. I thought all of that was uniquely powerful. Some of the images that came out of that storyline were really fantastic and striking. So yeah, I mean, all that stuff excites me. I think this stuff, have they started writing, or is this just an announcement saying, "Hey, we're going to do something"?
I mean, these books the first book is slated for August, so I would assume it's written.
Yeah.
Now, because I know Timothy Zahn was supposed to have a book release in May or June, and they pushed it all the way back to October. But he talked about this at DragonCon last fall, before the announcement. He talked about Timothy Zahn likes to talk to people at DragonCon, and he'll say, "What if I wrote this?"
Yeah.
It turns out he's already written it. He's just kind of like
testing the waters or something.
And he they kind of lost my place.
Timothy Zahn, Comic-Con or DragonCon. What if I wrote this? He's already written.
Yeah, so we don't know why they moved that book back, but he actually has already said, they pushed it back, but in the meantime, we can talk about this. But he's already written the first two. He's already told us the first two books are done, and the second one wasn't to come out until over a year from now.
Wow.
So, and I know they first pitched this Project Luminous idea back in 2014.
I kind of do remember that. Even before what The Force Awakens was 2015. Yeah. Wow. So even way back then, huh?
Yeah. So I think they've been game planning this for a long time, and I'd be shocked if at least Charles Soule's book's not finished.
Mm-hmm. And I love his stuff. I read his Darth Vader comic book was really great. And Kevin Scott's stuff is really fantastic. He was the one that he did was Dooku.
Right.
So yeah, that's some good stuff right there. So I'm just looking forward to that.
I didn't realize he was the author on Dooku. I really enjoyed the book.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he was the writer.
Yeah, but am I right to assume that, Andrew?
I think that's right.
I think, yeah. Check the shelf, Marisha.
I don't think that one's on the shelf.
It's not on the shelf?
Mm-mm.
Why isn't it on the shelf?
I don't know.
It's not on the shelf.
I have it, but I'm not real sure where it is. It just appeared in the move.
Oh, yeah, that's what happens when you move. Things disappear.
Things disappear.
But you find things that you lost years ago, and then you lose.
In the last move.
That's funny. Like the one left sock.
Yeah.
So what do you guys this will kind of go towards your science fictionary stuff. We are seeing a lot of news out of the Lucasfilm camp about Spielberg dropping Indy 5 and no John Williams music. This is like what? Yeah, it's like.
I guess, yeah. I mean, John Williams is like 100. I mean, he really is very. I think he's in his 90s.
Yeah, it's sad. Obviously, you want your heroes to live forever, and they, this is it is sad. But if there's no John Williams music in an Indiana Jones movie, there's no Steven Spielberg. There won't even be a Paramount logo to play off of. What's the point?
I'm okay with seeing Indy continued in some way, shape, or form, but
yeah,
there's something about this movie that has seemed kind of ill-conceived from the beginning.
Yeah,
like it's like they're just doing. It's like I always go back. Somebody asked Harrison Ford back when they were making the fourth one, and asked him why at his age he would come back and make another Indiana Jones movie. And he just,
yeah, it's I don't mind seeing Harrison Ford. Obviously, he's one of my favorite characters or actors in Hollywood because he's in so many films that I really love and enjoy. Star Wars, Indiana Jones. So if he's in one more, I'm okay with it. Again, seeing him in Rise of Skywalker was out of left field for me, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's back. But yeah, you're right.
But honestly, I'm a little more. The no John Williams music actually bothers me a little more than the no Steven Spielberg.
Yeah,
I'm a huge Steven Spielberg fan, but he hasn't made. I mean, the heyday of Steven Spielberg is decades ago now. Like he's still making movies, but he's not making a lot of really great movies anymore.
Yeah, I can't even remember what the last movie was.
I mean, he did Ready Player One, which is
yeah,
mediocre. I mean, people that really love the books didn't love it because it
Walmart.
just didn't follow the books. Yeah, I mean, it was in the $5 bid at Walmart almost immediately. And
never speaks well.
No, and he's done a few. I mean, War Horse was a good movie, but
yeah,
as far as the old action adventure kind of stuff that we kind of
associate with him,
came to love Steven Spielberg for, like, he just doesn't really do it much anymore.
Yeah.
But
and
yeah,
that's I get too bad.
No new John Williams. I think Last Crusade, some of my favorite movie music ever.
Definitely. Yeah.
I love it. In fact, we were really indignant to discover that we went down the rabbit hole of Academy Awards and realized that Last Crusade lost out on an Academy Award to Chariots of Fire for the soundtrack.
Vangelis.
I mean, come on. It's just not that good. It's not that interesting. Anyway, again, I have opinions. But I think I'm with you. Maybe the saddest thing is no new Indiana Jones music, at least. I mean, no new John Williams music.
There's plenty of composers out there, and obviously one of the new composers, I guess not new, but the one that handles Rebels, the one that handled Rebels is really good.
He really is.
There's a couple of episodes towards the end of Rebels, towards the end of the last season, that were, I got to tell you, they were spot on. They really, reinvigorated that Star Wars feeling, and they really should give him a film to do or something in the series.
I felt like he did a really great job of pulling elements from the original, from existing music, and sort of highlighting them and making them sort of bringing them to the forefront. It wasn't completely new. It was like, well, yeah, I guess that is part of the Force theme, but I never really noticed it before.
Sure.
And they kind of highlighted that as the main Force theme through Rebels, and did a lot of things like that, where he was using motifs from, but not the main themes that we automatically associate with the characters. Just sort of, secondary things, and sort of building on them and making them a whole theme in and of themselves.
The good thing as far as John Williams, I mean, yes, he's, he might do another movie here or there, but he's not going to do much at this point. But the upside is that he has inspired, at this point, multiple generations of future composers.
Yeah.
Composers, musicians. I mean,
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. I want to say hello to University of Coruscant's Dr. Sonny Ravencourt is in the chat room. Awesome. Greetings, Dr. Ravencourt. We are honored to have you in the chat room. So what else? What other Star Wars news or Indiana Jones news? There's a lot of things going on. I read earlier in the week that 2 directors' names were thrown out there for season 2 of The Mandalorian. Did you guys hear that?
Did not hear that. Do tell.
Mangold.
Okay.
And Robert frickin' Rodriguez. Mandalorian is very, I can kind of see some mariachi elements there, some shoot 'em ups. So, if Cheech doesn't show up in a Mandalorian, I'll be very surprised.
Maybe just a variation.
Yeah.
Maybe not just strictly, straight up Cheech. It's inspiration.
Bounty Hunter Cheech.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, so
No,
that'll be cool.
That's two great names. I've been. I mean, I'm constantly impressed with the talent that Jon Favreau just keeps reaching in and pulling out name after name.
It's like, oh wow, excited to see what they do. Yeah.
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 For sure.
And what are they doing right that the film people aren't? I mean, think about that. They,
Dave
Filoni, Favreau. I mean, they're really, two creatives behind the scenes that really, they're, I guess, I don't want to say they're like fans. They're real. I mean, they are fans, but they can kind of relate to us. They know what, I think they know what we want to see because they want to see it too. You know what I mean?
I mean, Dave, as far as people still involved with Star Wars, Dave Filoni has created more Star Wars content than anybody.
Yeah.
Countless hours of Star Wars content.
And during Clone Wars, he was Lucas's protege, so they worked hand in hand. I mean, you can't go wrong with that, whether, no matter how you feel about George Lucas, but,
and then Jon Favreau is just, as much as he kind of came out of nowhere almost, I mean, has really become the director of that generation.
Who would have thought? The guy from Swingers.
Yeah, right?
It guy. Yeah, making movies.
I mean, it's like he just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Mm-hmm. And it's in tackling bigger and bigger projects. And the technology that he brought on board for a TV show in The Mandalorian is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though, I feel like J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson are fans in much the same way that Jon Favreau is a fan. But I think that the missing element really was that that canon encyclopedia, that person who really didn't just love Star Wars. Because, I mean, whenever Jon Favreau first pitched this story, he was, talking about his Boba Fett, he kind of was envisioning a Boba Fett story, and Dave Filoni had to be like, dude, Boba Fett's not a Mandalorian. And so that tells me that he had a lot of enthusiasm, but maybe not as much knowledge. And I feel like maybe some more lore could have.
I mean, it certainly helps to have somebody that can deep dive into the lore and pull out these little elements and props.
And one of your writers, not just somebody being like, no, somebody who's actually involved in the storytelling process.
And can tell you why no,
Right.
But I think the biggest thing is having a single creative mind driving the whole thing. He brought in all these incredibly talented directors. He brought in Dave Filoni. He brought in all these people to work on this project, but he remained the single creative mind that drove it forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. And, season 2 of Mandalorian seems to be gearing up to be something real special. I don't want to say that season 1, they were kind of pulling the punches, but maybe they were a little bit, because I see a lot of other science fiction shows like Star Trek on CBS All Access. And that show is pretty, let me tell you. It looks pretty damn good.
I'm talking about Picard.
Well, Picard, yes, but even the second season of Discovery, I mean, it looks amazing.
They really do. I mean, the technology for that stuff has come so far.
It's amazing how pretty they can make TV shows now. It's like you sit down and you watch like Star Trek from the 60s, and it's like, wow, we have gotten so spoiled.
Well, that's why I can't wait to see that Lord of the Rings series next year.
That's dropping on Hulu or Amazon?
Amazon.
It's an Amazon Prime series sometime in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That is cool. What is University of Coruscant saying? I think it's almost a prerequisite now that you had to have some sort of Star Wars childhood in order to direct or produce Star Wars stuff now. It's in everybody's wheelhouse. It really is. I mean, it inspires generations of creatives. It's, science fiction in general is kind of something that kind of frees your mind. I always like deep down, like my wife just cannot watch anything sci-fi. She has to have her dysfunctional families and relationships and therapists and all that stuff in movies. And I'm like, you know what, you can watch that on your own. But for me, it's like sci-fi. It's just like it's like looking at a Rubik's Cube and just kind of looking at it from another angle and trying to figure things out. And it gives us the freedom to think in such a different way. Like Spock's 3D chess,
Right.
It's really, it gives your mind that flexibility to ask the what if, and then and not just to ask about it, but to think about it and then just continue, to try to at least answer it in your own mind. And that, for me, that's what science fiction does for me.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It's really cool. It's really cool. I can't, again, I married one, but I just can't figure people out that don't like sci-fi. You're lucky, Andrew. You are lucky.
So
Yeah, I think it's some of that for some people is all about finding the right science fiction.
that's true.
Um,
Some people are really into Doctor Who. It's their thing.
Yeah, I love that. I started watching that with my son. It's its own thing.
It's its own thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good. My wife sometimes comes out after my son and I are watching something, and she'll like start making stuff up as if she knows what she's talking about. So she'll come up after a Doctor Who episode and say, "Hey, how did Annie do with the droids?" We're like, "Shut up."
Kind of like Andrew's commentary on Downton Abbey. It's like never that relevant. It just isn't.
That's funny. Yeah. But that's good stuff. Tell us a little bit about Sci-Fictionary.
Okay, so we've got a new show called The Science Fictionarian that is, we wanted to do something because we would go off on these long, ridiculous tangents on Coruscant Radio Underground and talk about
all the
X-Files or Dune or any other endless number of series that we're fans of. And I would end up just having to cut all that out and throw it away. And
lots and lots.
And so Daniel, my co-host on Coruscant Radio Underground, he comes on sometimes, but he was way more interested, and he's been pushing for about a year now to start a second show and cover more of that type of stuff. Daniel is an encyclopedia of comic book knowledge, Star Trek knowledge, Battlestar Galactica, and that kind of stuff. And so we really just started the second show just to have an outlet for that stuff.
Because we used to sit around, and that was our kind of opening segment for Coruscant Radio Underground, was we just talked like, okay, what are you watching this week? What are you into today? Into the Badlands or Star Trek or whatever latest Marvel movie. And so that was kind of our way to talk about all the other things that we're low-key obsessed with.
So we're really excited about
things too. So
that's the other thing. We've got 4 of us on that show, and we're kind of all into a little bit different, different stuff.
Yeah.
And
because Andrew and Daniel went to high school together, and then there's me, who was raised under a rock. I was homeschooled, and so
we span a pretty good age range too, because David on that show is actually Daniel's son.
Yeah,
and he makes us all feel old.
And I know you guys recently talked about comic books and some of the new films and some of the new stuff that's coming out, streaming. I mean, what a time to be a geek, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We had to get, it's like, oh, we have to get this new service because we have to talk about it on the new show. Oh, well. So yeah, we've been watching. Somebody had the great idea that the less initiated among us, being me and David need to go back and watch all the old Star Trek movies. So that's what we've been doing. That's going to be a segment, I guess, for the foreseeable future. As we're going to go back, we watched the motion picture and then Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock. So we've been going through watching old Star Trek movies. So that's been
awesome.
That's been pretty fun. Yeah.
That's getting back to seeing a lot of these older actors in new movies, like seeing Harrison Ford again. Sometimes when I'm tired of all this new stuff, I'll go back and I'll watch the original series Star Trek, where Spock and Kirk and Bones are all in their prime, and it's it makes me sad, but it's kind of like a breath of fresh air. It's like, oh, I'm safe again. That feeling.
I was happy.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for optimism. I'm sorry, like I really appreciate sometimes just the kind of in spite of like so many things that were going on in the world in the 60s, it wasn't just all bubblegum and, unicorns, but just that such an optimistic view of like, look at how great we could do. So
you might want to answer this question here.
Old Star Trek movies any good? Okay, so if you're looking for like, wow, those are some amazing special effects, this is not going to do you. But as far as the stories, just really compelling. I mean, Khan is an iconic villain for really good reason. So yeah, I'm really enjoying them. You don't watch them the same way that you would watch J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movies. They're a completely different viewing experience, but yeah, I'm really enjoying them.
The funny thing with the older Star Trek movies is that, and for whatever reason, this had worked out. The even ones are not that great, and the odd ones are better than the even ones. So it's, a lot of people had problems with motion picture. Wrath of Khan was fantastic, and then 3 was not that great, but Voyage Home was fantastic. So I like them all for different reasons. I think, seeing the gang, travel back in time to save the whales was a lot of fun. I really like.
See, now you went and spoiled it for me.
Well,
it's only been out 40 years.
For like 47 years, yeah. But yeah, those are great.
I was raised under a rock. I didn't see all this, except Star Wars. Now,
where are you at now? Where are you at now on Trek?
Search for Spock. I just finished Search for Spock.
Okay.
And I did see one of the like random ones later on with the Borg Queen.
You saw Nemesis.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you've seen everything past like
Generations.
You saw Generations and First Contact, I think, with me.
Maybe.
And then you've of course seen all the new ones.
Yeah. And I like me some J.J. Abrams Star Trek. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I know a lot of people hated on it, but I kind of loved it.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of controversy now with Picard and Discovery. I'm not like a Trekkie, like devoted, like into the lore and the philosophy of it. I enjoy some good sci-fi, and I think I'm enjoying Picard. I can kind of see why people have a problem with it because of, I guess, the story and the creative decisions that are being made in that universe. I can kind of, understand why people are dissing it. But I'm enjoying it. It's like I said, it looks pretty. And I love seeing, Patrick Stewart, back in action. I know he's also old, but come on. It's Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying Picard. I know I can't watch it with my kids. That's my main knock against it is I like to be able, I mean, there are also always going to be some things in Star Trek that are a little adult, but I can have
this is like really adult.
Yeah, I can have her conversations with my kids, but I can't just sit down and watch, F-bombs, with my 5-year-old. I just can't.
Or eyes being plucked out of someone's socket
Yeah,
and
see,
screaming. It's like, yeah, that might be a little too much.
it's a little too much, and
Yeah.
and so that's been my one real knock against it is that it's so much darker,
Yeah.
which is
And
fine for me.
Yeah, and I don't mind like dark sci-fi. I think one of the reasons it's that whole Christopher Nolan Dark Knight situation. I'm okay with that. I love when sci-fi and genre is like serious. Obviously, people that know my feeling towards The Last Jedi, there was just too much comedy in it for me. I can't even watch The Orville because it connects. There's too much like comedy and sci-fi. I can't. Alex makes fun of me for that. They
Orville is the best.
Yeah, I can't do it. I've tried twice.
I guess you probably didn't like Galaxy Quest either.
But the thing about Galaxy Quest is, like, I went into that knowing that this was kind of like a parody.
And you didn't go into a show made by Seth MacFarlane and assume?
Well, yeah, I guess people change. But yeah, I get, and everybody is telling me that the second season of Orville is like a lot more serious.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the goofiness.
Yeah, but isn't like one of the pilots, he's like an elephant or something with the big.
Yeah, but it's Patrick Warburton. I mean, so like he's always going to be a little weird, right?
Yeah.
We got really off topic. Like from our Star Wars books, and now we're talking about the Orville. Like,
Orville.
And this is why we have another show.
Yeah, but that's the good thing though about this genre. It's like we can talk for hours about certain things, and Star Wars leads into other stuff, which is great. So before we wrap up, I just want to say a big thank you and send you guys some hugs from Chicago. What are you guys planning? What are you guys doing next? Anything special? Are you done sewing children's costumes?
For today?
Yeah,
oh my God.
It's almost time to start gearing up for Dragon Con.
Yeah. So. Okay, so the Menomenas on the Muppets?
Yeah.
Okay, so my kids are going to be the Menomenas.
Oh my God.
And they're going to be so cute. I'm going to make like the little like 70s like outfits. The girls are going to wear like little mini dresses, and Elijah's going to wear like a jumper with bell bottoms, and they're going to do their hair, and they're going to have like glasses with the big. They're going to be so cute. That's next.
Hilarious. Yeah. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, Andrew is going. He and one of his buddies are going to go this weekend, and some kind of adventure expo, and see Josh Gates talk about his own brand of being nerdy, and go see the Schmodown.
Yeah, we're going to go do the Schmodown live.
Oh, that's cool.
On Saturday in Atlanta. So
nice.
And I'll probably sew.
You'll probably sew. You should have like built-in thimbles in your on your thumbs. Talk about sci-fi.
I was like, that's the dark kind of
dark
sci-fi. No.
So we've got C2E2 happening in Chicago this weekend, and that should be really great. Yes. It's in the same venue that it is in the same venue as the auto show that happens here in Chicago in the winter, so that should be a lot of fun. I'm going to hang out with Todd and Heather and everybody at WSTR Galactic Public Access. That's awesome. And hopefully I'll see some other Chicago pods.
Yeah,
and then we'll be able to hang out. I'm definitely going to bring my equipment and shove a microphone and a camera in everybody's faces and see if I can, get some interviews for the show.
That would be great. Yeah, I always see people talking. Eventually, that's what I'd like to do, because I always see all the cosplayers are always. That's one that most of them do. So all the Instagram has been real lively here the past few weeks.
It's Chicago has two great cons. It's C2E2 and then Wizard World in Rosemont, which is a suburb right outside Chicago. It's basically next to the airport.
Okay, yeah, so we usually do Wizard World when it comes to New Orleans.
That's cool.
Which is also great.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've been lobbying for a while to bring Celebration to New Orleans. It just, I mean,
They're not
why
listening.
not?
Nobody listens. We have
Nobody.
good ideas.
I know you do. Yeah, that would be cool. It's really fascinating to have a Star Wars celebration in your hometown.
Mhm.
I would
I'm
imagine.
sure.
It's Chicago got lucky when
Yeah.
when they made that announcement, a couple of years ago. I was like, my jaw dropped, and I'm like, really? That's so cool.
That's pretty exciting. Yeah. And you don't have to spend an absolute fortune to fly there and then stay.
Yeah, everybody's
Added
asking me.
bonus.
Yeah, everybody's asking me if I'm going to Anaheim, and at this point, I think hotels are done. Nobody, unless people make cancellations.
The only thing you could do at this point probably is
Sleep
stay-
under a bridge.
You can stay. Could get a room at Disney.
Yeah,
One of the Disney resorts would probably be
for
your only real
$6,000.
option. Right.
I'm gonna have to ask Harrison Ford for a little.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
really wanted to go, but it's just
We
not.
want tickets.
Yeah. We got tickets. We're selling tickets.
Oh, that's right.
We need kids
But we're
tickets
gonna.
for
We just
Celebration.
decided we go to Dragon Con. We stay at my brother's house. We can drive from my brother's house to it'd be downtown in 10 minutes. And
Sure.
it's just we could do Dragon Con so cheap. They're a week apart this year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we just decided to go ahead and go back to
We
Dragon
could
Con.
literally go to Disney World for a week for what it would cost us to go to Celebration for the 4 days.
Mm, yeah.
And we got kids, so Disney World's always going to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Choice.
You gotta feed them. You gotta
Feed them, clothe them,
clothe
take them
them.
to Disney World.
Take them to Disney World. Excellent, guys. Thank you again so much for joining me on the Scarif Scuttlebutt live stream, talking about everything under the sun. A little bit of novels, a little bit of this, and a little bit of that. Tell the folks how people can find you guys.
You can find me on princessesandpadawans.com because, I sew for my princesses and Padawans. And also I am princesses_and_Padawans on Instagram and Padawans on Twitter. Right?
Yep.
Yes.
And you can find me at thesciencefictionary.com. You can find both of our podcasts there, The Science Fictionarian and Coruscant Radio Underground. Both have players on the site. They're also available pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. And you can find my Twitter account at sci_fictionary.
Beautiful, beautiful. So what is next for you guys? What new things are you guys working on?
What new things?
Didn't you guys record this week?
We did.
Yes, we did.
We'll
Our
have a new episode.
second or third episode.
Well, no, we actually have a new episode of both shows coming this week. Hopefully, so Daniel, my co-host on Coruscant Radio Underground, is actually doing the editing duties and hosting duties on the new show,
Oh, cool.
and he's getting a crash course in
Why
editing and
Andrew
all
complains when
the.
it goes longer than an hour.
So he's getting a crash course in the editing right now, and it's a little slow, but that'll pick up over time. And but we'll actually should have a new episode of Coruscant Radio Underground up tomorrow night.
Nice. I'm definitely
We'll also talk about Project Luminous.
cool.
Yep.
Excellent. Awesome, guys. So anything else you want to add before we wrap things up this evening?
And thanks for having us. We had a great time. And I mean, I've been driving since 6:30 this morning, and I was still really happy to be on here. So you can take that as a compliment because
Definitely.
I don't do 6:30 in the morning, and I certainly am not still doing anything at 10:30 if I was up that early. So there you go.
There you go. So we definitely appreciate you guys. We love talking to you, and you are the bee's knees, as they say.
All right. Well, right back at you. So thanks for having us.
No problem. So, Scare of Scuttlebutt, we are on iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, Podcast.com, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and right here on YouTube. If Alex were here, I'd throw it to him and he'd say, that's the Scuttlebutt. But since he's not here, Marisha, last words.
And that's the Scuttlebutt.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. Do-do-do.